questions and then we can kick in. Oh, hey. All right, we're ready to roll. Back to you, Shiz.
That lady always reminds you, doesn't she?
She really does.
Awesome. So we will keep a recording of this and we'll put it somewhere for people to share and look at afterwards if it's been of value for you. We would love to get your feedback. We will have some feedback at the end as well. So if you stick around, we'd love to hear what you think of today. Yeah, let's kick into it. Kia ora, ko Cheryl Takuingoa. My name is Cheryl and I started this community at some point last year. I can't actually even remember the date, but we built this community. It started from an idea and it's turned into what feels like a bit of a movement that we're now part of, and it's so exciting to be part of it. And it's so exciting to welcome a bunch of new people in today. This is a space for our people. So we believe that Agile is more than just a shift in the way that we work. We believe Agile is about really understanding people, and better ways of working happen when we can align with our people. So the goal of this community is to bring our Agile community together, our HR community together, and come together to talk about complex problems in our organizations, especially when we're working with people. And what we're going to explore today, as we do with each of these monthly sessions, are some complex challenges which have no right or wrong answer. And I'm really careful to sort of express this with our community, that what we share today are ideas and thoughts to expand our thinking into different ways that we might be able to solve some of these complex problems. But we're not coming from a place of there's only one answer. We're coming from a place of experiences, insights, and knowledge within these industries. And hopefully it sparks a few ideas for you as well. So kia ora tātou, welcome to our community. Safety briefing. If at any point through this session you see or hear anything inappropriate in terms of any other members of the community, you have the right to turn your mic on and just let us know, or you can message us directly in the chat. Zoom bombing is a real thing, and we do our best to hold off sharing the Zoom link until the day of the event. But if you do see anything, please let us know, and if we need to, we'll just end the call immediately if we have to. That's just a quick safety briefing. For us, it's really important that we are looking after our community and we're creating a safe space. The flow for today. So if this is your first time joining in, we call this an interactive podcast. What we've got is a couple of incredible speakers that are joining us today, and you're going to have the chance to submit some questions for them on the topic of data and HR. And you will submit the questions, and then the group, everyone listening, can vote for which questions they want to bump to the top. So you will decide which questions that are going to go in the order. And what we'll do is we'll hold 5 minutes for each question. Now, if you submit a question and you are comfortable to submit your name with it, we'll offer you the opportunity to unmute your mic and just share a bit of context on the question. Sometimes these questions need a bit of context in order to help answer them. So that's how the flow of it will work. So we'll have the questions will go into Slido, and I think Charlotte will hopefully be able to pop into our chat channel the link to the Slido poll. So yes, awesome. Kia ora, thank you, Charlotte. And as an introduction, kia ora, and to my amazing co-host Charlotte Hinton, who joins me each month, and together we managed to keep the dynamics of this all moving. So kia ora, Charlotte, welcome in. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. I'm really pumped. I'm excited about the conversations and where we're going to go today. I feel like I say that every month, but the sun is shining, things are feeling pretty good. So great to see so many people here today. So thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Sure. Thank you, Charlotte. Again, that Slido link is in the channel. If you've got a question at the top of your mind that you want to throw down, feel free to jump in and put it in there. Or your question might arise as the conversation flows today. So we'll keep adding it into the chat channel, because each time people enter, they don't see all the chat from beforehand. So you might notice it popping up a few times in there. And then you can go in and vote for questions that you're like, that is a banging question, I want to put that to the top. We'll take the ones at the top, hold 5 minutes, and then we've got 2 incredible speakers who are going to share their thoughts and insights for us today as well. Yeah, I think I've got some notes here, but I feel like I've randomly, one quick thing as well before we move forward, in terms of our community values. safety, learning and respect, SLR. We want to make this a safe space for everyone to share thoughts and ideas. Learning, this is the primary goal of these sessions, is to learn from each other, and respect. So there might be things that are shared today that you may or may not agree with, which can be quite cool and exciting because it's challenging our views. Just being aware and conscious of how we can agree or disagree in a respectful way that acknowledges what we're here to do is to solve some real challenging, complex problems, which have many, many different solutions and ideas to them. So kia ora and welcome. I'm now going to introduce two humans who have been such a delight in my life. I was fortunate to work at the same organisation as them, and they continue to be good friends of mine. And when this topic came up, so the topic was voted by our community in last month's session, and data and HR came up. And I thought, who is it that I would love to talk about data with? Because I love to talk data. And first of all sprung to mind was, she's often termed as the data unicorn, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about her shortly. And as I started to think around inviting her into the conversation, I thought that conversation wouldn't be complete unless I could invite this other incredible human in as well. So I'd like to welcome into the conversation. We've got Shasta Wilson, who is the HR reporting manager at PwC. And we've got Josephine Richardson, who's our senior HR manager at Westpac. Now, these two beautiful women, I know a number of people are joining the session today because you either know them, you work with them, you've worked with them, or you just think they're amazing like I do. So I'd like to welcome you both in to our data unicorn, Shasta. I'm really excited to get some of your thoughts around the capturing of data. And I know this is your jam, this is your space, this is the stuff we often sit up till all hours talking about and getting excited about. And Jo's coming in really with this incredible awareness of people. And I know you two have worked as a team before, and that's why I'm so keen to bring you in. So welcome in. I'd love to do an intro, but flip it. So Jos and Shasta, you could share with me about the other person. What is one of their superpowers? Do you want to kick us off, Jos?
Yeah, sure. Kia ora, everybody. Ko Josephine tuku ingoa. Pleasure to be here. And it's really cool that I can do this with Shasta. So I'd love to be able to introduce you to her. Number one, Shasta is fun. And I think there's always been a real blessing for me when I've been working with her, trying to work on some difficult, like tricky data stuff. And what I've written down as her superpower is Shasta knows how to answer the question that I don't know how to ask. And then we have lots of lols.
That. Oh, Jos. Kia ora koutou, ko Shasta tuku ingoa. My name is Shasta, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Cheryl, for organising this, and Charlotte as well. Jos's superpower is she's very calm. She's very calming to be around. So when there's a lot of things going on, Jos is very good at keeping it simple, keeping it very clear and concise, and she's great in a crisis, is Jos.
I do love a crisis. Love a drama.
Awesome. So we've got Can you say that again, Jos, that superpower of Shasta's? Because I think that's quite a key part for us to kick off this event, actually.
She knows how to answer the question that I don't know how to ask.
She knows how to answer the question I don't know how to ask. I love that. And I know that today when we're talking about data and HR, we're often looking at how do we capture this stuff and how do we then use it? And I love you guys are coming from these two different angles. So before we kick in, again, if you have a question, actually, we might need to get a couple of questions rolling in there. I might kick us off with one, but if you can pop in to our Slido poll, you'll see it in the chat channel. Keep in mind, you can ask any question, provided it sort of relates to data and HR. But It might be around the ethical side of data. I know there's a number of people that have been in touch with me saying, are you going to talk about that side of it? I know there was a question we talked about just before we came on live, was around data sovereignty in Aotearoa. It might be around, what do you do with data once you get it? And what is the impact on people? So these questions that you ask will guide where the conversation goes today. If we don't have any questions, Charlotte and I will just keep going with whatever we want to talk about, which is cool, because I've got a bunch that I want to ask. But perhaps while people are popping questions in, I'm going to kick us off with a question just lining into what you guys had shared there. And this is our first go at all of us timing ourselves for 5 minutes. All right, so I'm going to just put on our beautiful speakers so that they know where they're at in terms of 5 minutes. So when we look at capturing data and using the data, and interested to get a point of view from both of you, how can you make that work well? So perhaps you're in an HR team, which is a capacity that you guys were in, you're in a team, and one of you was responsible for the capturing and one was responsible for what are we going to do with it. What are some things that you would sort of suggest to people around how do you create a good relationship between those two different areas?
That's a good question. Shasta, I'm really interested in what you're going to say here. The first thing that came to my mind was get a Shasta Wilson in the team. And the comment that I would make is around how you use it is cleanly and make it really simple, so that people know how to focus their attentions or what they should be focusing on. But yeah, keen to hear what you want to say about that, Shasta, and then we can.
No, I agree. Like, it does need to be really simple, and I think there's just so much data out there. We collect so much data about our employees, like, and we often have, a payroll system and an HRIS, and then ultimately, typically a lot of different spreadsheets as well. And then how do we pull that all together into something that's really easy for people to understand? Because I find often, people will ask questions, but it's, and then, they expect to be provided with a spreadsheet with the answer in it, but then they have to do some interpretation of that spreadsheet themselves. And often that expertise sits with an analyst, for example. So how do we make that more digestible so that our HR business partners can actually understand the information? So, for example, might have a question around, how many women do we have in senior leadership positions? And sometimes you might have a spreadsheet in front of you and not know that answer. What I can do is kind of, I guess, pull it all together into something succinct. And then often there's more questions behind that. So I think that's what Jose and I often do, is we'll sit down and have a chat around what is the actual question? Like, what are you trying to find out? Because ultimately, I can give you a spreadsheet with some information in it, but it might not answer the actual question that you've got until we actually sit down and have a chat and go, okay, what are you actually trying to answer? And then I can visualize it in a way that makes sense rather than giving you a scary spreadsheet with a million rows in it. Maybe make it into a nice picture so that you can then go, okay, these are the decisions I need to make. And this is the information that I've got. And here it is in a nice little succinct pack more often than not.
Yeah. I think it's really important that just touching on that question bit and how Shasta, you and I would have these chats, because ultimately the data that we keep on our employees, we've got to think of it as tapu and sacred, and it's not ours to just do willy-nilly with. We have to be really conscious of that. And that's why it's so important to have that conversation to understand why we want this. And I often wouldn't know, or I wouldn't have had it clear in my mind what I was trying to answer or what I was trying to fix or solve or drive. And so if I could go, I used to go plonk myself next to Shasta's desk, take off her headphones, hello, and we would talk it out, and it would be multiple questions back and forth. And then I would get this picture, because she knows that that was probably the way I was going to be able to understand it, that I could then use to support whatever business leader I was supporting at the time, was something really clear and useful, not just interesting, but useful. And I think I just wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have that relationship where we could like talk it out and figure out why we want it, and where we're going to get it from.
And I think that's important, not just making it interesting. Like a lot of people will go, oh, I want this. Why though? You know, and really understanding that rather than going, oh, this would be really interesting to see. Cool, but what action are you going to drive out of it? And I think that's really important around the data that we capture, you know, needs to have ultimately a use behind it. Yeah.
Man, it's super powerful. I know we've got another 30 seconds on this, so maybe just riffing a bit further or following that, what is the actual question? And then what is the action? Because that feels important, right? How often do you guys see that the data you're being asked for, is that if you ask for what's the problem that you're trying to solve, how often do people actually have an answer to that?
Sometimes we kind of have to, I find I have to support them through that and really find out how is what they're asking for, I guess, aligned to either an HR strategy or an objective of some sort. Because I kind of, or sometimes I get quite vague questions and I have to just explore it a bit more. I guess in an HR environment too, we get some different questions than we would from the business. So it depends on the audience as well. But often Jose is good at filtering those ones through. So it's working really closely with the HR business partner around what questions we need to be answered with data.
All right, we're at 5 minutes on that one. We're going to jump into our questions are humming in here. So our first question at the top, Hannah, the question, and I'll share the question. Hannah, you're welcome to jump in after that and share any context of it. The question is, from your perspective, what are we not even thinking about yet that we should start to think about before it's too late?
Oh, I got a few ones on these.
Go.
Hannah, at the moment, quite topical. I think it's thinking about, particularly from an employee privacy and data privacy perspective, how do we as HR, or should we as HR, be capturing vaccination status of our employees? And I don't have the answer, but that's certainly something that we need to be thinking about. Probably it might almost be a little bit too late to start, like it's already happening. But that's kind of one that's top of mind at the moment.
It's a live issue, that one, right? Like it's evolving daily, with different organizations publicizing their stance on it. And it's a really interesting topic. I mean, I'm living for all the media and the talk and the different people's perspectives on it, and it's really interesting. From a Westpac perspective, we are really strongly recommending vaccinations, but you know, I'm hearing all sorts of different companies and different organizations starting to say that they are looking to mandate it. And it's a really interesting societal topic and shift. And it's really, the implications, going back to your question, Hannah, the implications of this will dictate how other things are looked at in the future. And so, there's a lot to think about there for sure.
I think from an HR analytics perspective, potential future things that we should be looking at as well is how our workforce is going to look in the future. And I know there's been so much research done on the future of work, but you'll see some stuff in the news at the moment about the great resignation that's happening. So I guess I find no matter what organisation I go to, the number of resignations jumps up after Christmas holidays. So people tend to come back from work, they've spent some time at home, they've had to think about, I don't know, their lives. They come back and, you know, you typically see a little resignation spike in around February. And it's interesting what's happening at the moment with people working from home, lockdown. I think you do see it, the great resignation stuff going around about a lot of people are reassessing their lives, their careers, work's becoming more flexible. You can work remotely, you can work for whatever company you want. It's, you know, I think it's just going to be interesting to see what comes through in organisations from an HR analytics perspective, what numbers that's going to drive. It'll just be, I think we're starting to see some really interesting trends. Yeah.
Welcome, Hannah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, jumping through to our next question at the top. And again, remember, if you want to vote on the questions that go up, we've got some pearlers in there at the moment. Moving into one from Joanne. So how do you get around older systems being unable to handle agile relationships? Perhaps Joanne,
That's a really good question.
Do you want to give any context, Joanne, to the question? It looks like Shasta and Joseph already have a sense of what you're
feeling you.
We're currently, I work at the warehouse. We're currently struggling with a recent transition to Agile and systems that just have not coped. There's a fair bit of manual shifting of people around, and that just isn't tenable in the long term, especially when you're shifting squads or looking to potentially shift squads every quarter or thereabouts. So it's a topical thing for us. Keen to hear what other people are doing to get around it.
Yeah, so I think you should start this one.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I've had some experience with implementing an agile organizational hierarchy in a payroll system that is built for a very hierarchical structure, and it is difficult to put in squads and chapters and tribes. And I guess because, you know, squad members, that the intention of the model is that they can move to the work, and I think that's the intention. They move very quickly and they can move around. And yeah, it was difficult, I guess, first setting it up, but then also what we found was that maintaining the employee movements became really difficult. We kind of just had to roll with the movements as they came in, and it's difficult to keep that in place. And I don't know that I have the right answer for it. All I know is that I empathise with you that it is very difficult to set up. I know that there are other organisations that have set this up as well, so I'd be keen to get their views as well. But
I think one thing that we realised is we needed to make more people aware and empowered and confident to do different parts of the process, so that there was more people who could make the changes. So we sort of shared that responsibility out a little bit more. I don't know if that was conscious necessarily, but I do think that improved things when we had, I'm just thinking of like the structure of the position code stuff. It was when we had more people who took accountability or understood why it was important, it was easier for us to work with that challenge. But yeah, it's other things will, I'm sure, as an industry, we will evolve to be able to support more agile practice as well. And that's exciting.
Does just as a follow-up to that one, does anyone's software or technological stuff support agile in a really good way? We're with various aspects right now. Pay Global really doesn't manage agile data very well, at least from our perspective. What do you guys use?
So at the moment we use Workday and Chris 21. where I am currently has a sort of an agile structure in part of the business, and Workday seems to cope with it pretty well.
And we have Chris 21 and are working towards a new operating system as well. So yeah, that's an exciting shift.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. And if you are listening, oh, there we go. There's our 5. Oh, yes. If you're tuned into this and you're listening and you have any thoughts you want to share, feel free to use the chat channel. Because obviously we can kind of keep some dialogue, maybe if you use a system that you've found really interesting or helpful, feel free to use that chat channel here within Zoom, and just so that, if you've got things you want to share, but it's not your question, you've got somewhere that you can share those as well. All right, moving on to our next question. This is from Anonymous. So if Anonymous, once I read the question out, you do want to give context, you can. If not, we can take the context that we want from it and answer it however. Should salary information be made public within an organisation to reduce inequity? So this might be a little more your own personal thoughts and views on that. So the question again, should salary information be made public within an organisation to reduce inequity?
That's a doozy. It's a good question. I have 2 views on this and they don't match. So
I love it, guys. Yes.
I can see that I see pros and cons for both ways. I think if we had okay, so I'll start with the it being open and transparent. I do think it is important to be transparent about aspects of salary data for sure. I think that can be, it helps people from a real human perspective. It helps people go, I feel safe because I know I'm in the right band or the right grade or however you refer to it in your company. And then they don't have to question it. Not knowing, not having any context or any transparency makes us from a human nature perspective, makes us like, ooh, like we're not sure. It makes us a bit curious. Is our colleague being paid the same as us, or are they being paid more than us, or is he getting paid more than me? And how do I test that? And how will I even know? And so not sharing that information can sometimes make people a little bit more nervous and a little bit more untrusting of the process. But then having full disclosure of everyone's salary, I'm not sure from a human perspective that that's helpful either, because I think because money is not necessarily a motivator, and so yeah, it's a really good question. I think my perfect situation in my perfect world, which doesn't exist, would be really clear banding, because I think that is useful to everyone, but not necessarily of personal salaries, because there's so many things that can go into that. Like there's tenure stuff, there's all sorts of like grandfathered, parented stuff that can sometimes be in there, and all that context is not necessarily going to be shared. So sometimes it can be confusing. So yeah, it's a great question. But yeah, probably maybe a middle ground is where I would see benefit.
Yeah, I agree there too, middle ground, but definitely making your, I guess your REM strategy and your practices visible and really clear, so that everybody kind of knows what they need to do to get to the next step, or why they might not be where they think they are, and having that really clear. But yeah, I guess it's just human nature, right? To compare yourself, but then you go, oh, she's got like beautiful hair, she's so lucky. It's like, it's not, sometimes it's not luck. There are things that we can put things around, like to say, this is why this pay band is this way, and these are the criteria. And if we can make the criteria really clear, then hopefully it can make those comparisons between people a bit less.
Yeah, nice. And I'm hearing there, as you're sharing that, if the goal is to create equity, there might be many different ways in which you can achieve equity, right? one of them could be making things a bit more transparent. And there's some cool comments coming up in the chat channel as well around a published ratio of the CEO versus the lowest paid workers.
Oh, yeah.
Ratios, that's a cool idea around, creating awareness without perhaps actually calling out exact figures. Yeah, and then I guess as an HR team, you might provide the data, then what? Right,
Yeah.
you might, if you share that information, what's going to happen with it? So cool, thank you, Anonymous. We're going to reset our timer. We've got a question now. Joanne, data governance. Oof, here we go. How do your senior leaders view people-related data? And when we say view, we're talking about actually how do they look at it? Dashboards, software used, how many hours does it involve? So I think, Joanne, maybe you can give us a bit of context around actually how do you present the data to your senior leaders? Is that right?
Yeah, so just for context, I've recently been appointed to a data stewardship role. I'm still learning what exactly that involves because that's not my background at all. And one of the bits of feedback that we've recently had in a workshop that I ran was around senior leaders wanting to get access to people data, but in order to get it, they have to go through people, or the data has to be downloaded and then cleaned and transformed and put into graphs for them to view. It's not a quick, simple, easy thing. So I wondered, how do people currently do that? Do they have teams of people sitting around ready to create dashboards, or is there a different way that senior leaders are getting their people data?
That's a really good question. Shasta, I was just going to say, we haven't even talked about Power BI yet. That's weird.
Yeah,
that we
how have we
haven't
gone
talked about
this long without talking about Power BI? I don't
it.
know.
I know, but here you go. This is the great question to we can put it up in lights.
Oh, you want me to go? No, you go.
We'll both go. At Westpac, we have Power BI. Shasta implemented it when she was there. Before we had it, it was, I can't even remember a world before we had Power BI for our people leader dashboard, because it is just completely, it's made all of our, the people data that we believe is important and that we want to focus on, readily accessible. It's updated all the time. It's easy to read. Everyone it's the same across the whole bank, and that has been a game changer for us.
I think. Oh, sorry.
You talk about the details of it.
I think. Yeah. So we and my current role as well. I'm using Power BI, but I think so Power BI is a data visualization tool. So it takes spreadsheets, and various different systems, pulls it all in to Power BI, and then you can view just what you need to see. And I think from a data privacy perspective, when we're sharing that information with our executive team or with different areas of the business, what it does really well is it locks it down to just the information that you need to see, that you have access to. So you can set what's called row level security, so that if you sit in a certain business unit, you only see that business unit. And it means that we can deliver stuff faster without having to split up a million spreadsheets directly to the user, just what they need to see really quickly. So also, I guess, that I often get a lot of different data requests for information that's sensitive, so sensitive employee data. Sometimes I get requests for things like, can you send me a list of birthdays, dates of birth for people, because we want to celebrate their birthday. That starts to get really difficult, and often I do not send that information out because of employee privacy. And so when I build a dashboard, I don't put any sensitive employee data in there. So it's all aggregated stuff, and it's only to, I guess, visible to employees who can actually action it, or managers who can action it, and then to our executive team, but always just locked down to what they need to see. Yeah, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great.
I remember at the data conference that we spoke at, that was a primary conversation for everyone, wasn't it? Power BI.
Love it.
Awesome. All right, shifting gear into probably a little bit more perhaps around your personal experience in terms of providing data for leaders. So this is from Anonymous. What data provided to your organisation's leaders has driven the most positive change? So maybe reflecting back through the experiences, the different leaders that you've worked with, thinking about perhaps if you flipped it around and went, when did I see some really positive change? What was some of the data that perhaps you might have provided that helped shift that?
Yeah, I think where I am now, we've made quite a bold statement that we're going to hire more Māori and Pacifica, which is difficult. I mean, given that the labour force makeup of New Zealand, you know, we don't have a whole lot of Māori and Pacifica to draw from, but certainly we want to be representative of the face of New Zealand. So I've been able to, I guess, pull together stats on how many Māori applicants have we had and where have they fallen down in the process or not got to, or where are most of them kind of dropping off. What's the, I guess, conversion rate from application to hire? And then, you know, how many have started with us in the last year and all that. So lots of data around, I guess, ethnicity and our applications and our hires, and what I've been able to do by providing that information to our managers and our leaders is actually give them an indication on, you know what, this is actually pretty tricky because we don't get a whole lot of applications in the first place. So how do we, you know, it brings up a lot of interesting discussion and a lot of societal issues that, you know, we're going to have to address, like how do we address those? I don't know the answer, but I guess providing that data has given them more a realistic view of just how difficult it might be.
Yeah, that's kind of similar vein to the ones that we're thinking, because I was thinking the women in leadership stat at Westpac. So we obviously have a goal to have 50% of senior leaders female, and that figure is watched very carefully. But the thing that makes it stand out for me is that it's not just a number that is adhered to. The feeling behind it, or the intention behind it, has trickled and infiltrated all the way down, where people are genuinely. So from all the workplaces I have been, you can feel it the minute you walk in, how supportive of female leaders and working mothers and all of that stuff, with the flexibility. And I mean, from a personal experience, when I first started, I had left my previous employer because one of the reasons, there were a few reasons, but one of them was that I felt really judged for being a working mother, and I was getting a bit bored of it. And so when I came to Westpac, there was just none of it. It was real, like there were so many women in leadership positions, really senior positions as well. And it was not even a thing. And I thought that was really, really impressive, because it wasn't just a number of having female in leadership positions. The whole stigma of being a working mother or an ambitious female in a corporate environment, not even there. And that blew me away. And that's one of the reasons I'm still here. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think too, you know, data can help them, I guess, change a strategy as well. So when we look at the Māori and Pacifica recruitment stats, we can see, hey, actually, do we need to change our recruitment sourcing approach because we're not getting as many applicants? Do we need to change some of the parts of our application process? Because, you know, do we need to adapt our systems so that we can capture iwi? You know, there's a lot of different fields that potentially we need to create as well. And how do we make sure that our processes fit for our strategy, but data can support a lot of those decisions as well, because you can see where things might not be working as well as you'd like, particularly if you've got a goal in mind around, you know, a target women in leadership percentage or a number of people that you want to hire. Yeah.
Beautiful, and it nicely lands into what you were sharing earlier, that around, you know, you're asking what is the problem you're trying to solve, and then what actions does that incentivize, right? And I love what you guys are sharing there. I also, it's interesting as you say that you notice values for an organization start to show up when we look at what we're measuring, right? And what you guys are sharing in your own personal stories are things that are of value to you and have had an impact, and that's so cool. All right, moving on. We are just ripping through these images that are coming in. Awesome. I love everything that's coming in here. Our next question is from Ruth. How do you measure engagement with the data, the dashboards, the insights beyond eyeballs and clicks?
Yes, great question. Thank you, Ruth.
You want to give us any context there, Ruth? If you wish.
Is that Ruth Nelson?
Yes, I do. It is. Hi, Shasta.
Hi.
Hi, I'm not in the HR community, I'm in the risk community, but we love Power BI. We closely followed Shasta's initiatives, so I'm very happy to be here. So yeah, we're facing into the same sort of problem where we've published some really awesome tools, and we know we're number 3 dashboard in the bank, which we're really proud of. But you know, how do you then go beyond just the clicks and the eyeballs? So people click into it. How do you know that we're really getting the value of the data and the insights that we're producing? We do have feedback channels, but it'd be really cool to see what innovations you guys are doing to get that real insight.
Yeah, so sorry, just to clarify, Ruth, are we talking about engagement with the tools, not employee engagement from the perspective of I feel engaged to work at my organisation?
Yeah, exactly. So we're producing all of the insights on the data. In my case, it's risk data, but you guys are talking about HR data as well, and which we also use. But it's really about how you know people are really getting the right insights from the information that we're producing.
Yeah, so I think just to start by answering that question, we do monitor clicks and how many people have viewed the dashboard to find out just how useful it is. But I guess it's also tracking the trends of the data that we're showing as well. So, for example, if you're measuring the number of employees who have excessive annual leave balances over a certain number of days, you will see that people are utilising the data and engaging with the dashboards when you see those metrics trending downwards. And I think that was kind of one of the key things that I saw when we implemented the dashboard, compared to before the dashboard was there, that actually the metrics moved a lot faster because people had more trust in the data because it was daily, it was readily available, and it was there, and it was digestible and easier to understand. So I think you'll be able to track the engagement of your metrics by the trend that the metric itself is actually showing, rather than actually just how many people have viewed it, which is also a useful metric, but in terms of making traction on some of the metrics, you'll be able to see, hopefully, the metric trending the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered that. I don't know if there's much I can add there, but yeah, and the only other thing I would say is, and ultimately, you'd hope to see an increasingly healthy culture within a workplace, because hopefully all these metrics that we're looking at and that we're tracking are all identified as being important to improve the employee experience, and by proxy the culture as well. So that's another way.
And I found too, when I've implemented a dashboard, I start with, like, I guess the kind of hygiene factors, the base level data. Sometimes it just starts with, you know, is this the percentage of data that's actually been complete in a system? So does everybody, I don't know, this is a silly example, does everybody have first name? Like, that would be a metric just to get it started, so that our data gets complete first. Then what happens is I take that metric off the dashboard once I know that that's in a good place, and I put another one up, and then we just keep rolling up until, I don't know, we end up in this utopia universe. Some I don't know, but what's good with Power BI is, yeah, you can move the metrics around depending on what the priority is. But if you're starting out, it is kind of good to start with, I guess, just measuring just the hygiene factors first, and then you can start moving up into more strategic metrics. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Oh, kia ora, Ruth. And is an extra tool or an option available, which we use a lot with agile teams, are hypothesis statements. So your hypothesis statement will usually end with, we will know this to be true when. So if you're running an experiment and you're collecting some data because you believe it's going to influence some behaviors, whatever those are, what are the behaviors that you expect to see shift as well, can be a helpful one. So when you capture this data, we expect people are going to do more of this or less of this. So like linking back in there to Joe, so, you know, what are the behaviors that we predict may shift, and how can we track that, whether that be through data or there might be some real interactions as well. So hypothesis statements, there's a million templates online for good ones for those, can be quite helpful. It's the actions at the end, right? What do we do once we get that data, or what do people do with that data once they get it? Beautiful. All right, shift it. We've just, these questions are coming in. We're going to have to just stay here for about 6 hours. No, we've got 11 minutes left. This session goes from 1 to 2 on the third Friday of each month. We'll put a link into the chat channel as well. If you want to be part of this community, we meet once a month, these events we host. And at the end of this session, we'll be voting on the topic for next month. So you'll decide what we're going to talk about next month. But I think we might have time to get another question in. Oh, it's just bumped to the top from Anonymous. Do you use data to show where employees drop out of internal processes for continuous improvement? And any examples? So do you use data to show where employees drop out of internal processes? So I guess probably thinking about from an HR standpoint, what might some of those processes be that you'd track that they might drop out of around continuous improvement?
Yes, I have in the past. I'm partway through implementing those measures in my new role at PwC, but previously, yeah, I have seen them work really well. And so you can see interesting things like, I guess if you take a cut by gender, for example, you can see where potential candidates, it might be slightly more biased towards a certain gender or a certain ethnicity or a certain age, and then you can kind of go in and look at that in more detail. You can run it based on, I guess, depending on if you have the data as well, because I find that that's difficult too. So it depends on which recruitment system you use. If you can, and whether the recruiters actually push the candidates through each of the stages and records it, because if the data is not there, unfortunately, it's difficult to analyze. But if it is there, you can get some really rich stuff around who's making it through the process and who isn't, and then I guess running some statistical analysis over the top to figure out, are there any biases in our process? Which part of the process are we making it more? Is it harder for candidates to get through? But then it becomes difficult to determine causality, right? Like, what is the cause of that? Do we need to look into it? It does bring up a whole lot of interesting discussion and more questions, but certainly something that I've seen used well in the past. Yeah.
I have nothing to add to that.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Or we might get another question in here. So this is from Hannah. Who are your goats in New Zealand? I'm going to guess you mean greatest of all time. Is that the right? Who are the goats in New Zealand or internationally nailing the use of people data in an agile context?
Oh, agile context.
Ooh. Cheryl, are we allowed to phone French? You're allowed to answer
that one.
I'd be interested in your answer to that as well.
I'm actually just flipping through my mind the data and HR conference that we were all at. and just trying to recall some of the different organisations that were presenting there. I know Plunkett were really were a key part of that. They were doing some really interesting things. I'm going to look to you two. Do you remember? My brain's gone a little bit blank, but perhaps what I can do is just try and recall some of those. There was another great woman who spoke there as well, who was doing some interesting things. So I might try and see if I can pop together a little list of the ones that were there at that event.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot internationally. Like there's some incredible organisations doing some really amazing things. But New Zealand, it's difficult, isn't it? So small, but Plunkett, I think we're doing some great things. Westpac does some amazing things.
And if you're listening to this in an organisation where you think we're doing some pretty cool stuff, again, feel free to pop it into the chat channel. My brain's gone a little bit blank at the moment, but I do know there is some really exciting stuff happening where the data is, it's not just becoming to support Agile, it's looking at how do we create agility and then capture data around that as well. And like you said, perhaps some organisations that don't have some of the archaic systems that some of our organisations have to roll with as well. But that's an interesting topic to pull up a few more case studies as well. We've got time maybe for one more. Maybe we might have to keep this on a little bit shorter, but I want to get one more question in. Joanne, how much automation have you managed to integrate to your data flow? How much automation have you managed to integrate to your data flow?
Over to you, Shasta.
Well, different organisations. Sorry, Joanne, you had one. Different organisations I've worked at have had, I guess, varying amounts of data automation. I know a few organisations who have bots, which I know work really well, particularly around when an employee fills out a form, like their KiwiSaver form, and then a bot just puts it in the payroll system. So I think there's some really cool things that are available. I know there's Power Automation, which is part of the Power BI, I guess, Microsoft Office suite, and that can put some really cool automated workflows in as well. But yeah, I've seen bots work really well, so that's Yes.
So it sounds like there's some different tools that you've been sharing today. Power BI, Workday, and Cross 21. Again, I know there's a number of people joining this call that are quite new to the automation and the data automation space. So that's just helpful to know any other tools or starting places that you would maybe suggest for someone who's coming into this and would like to, where do you get your inspiration? What are some of the spaces that you keep an eye on?
I follow Josh Burson. He's got some really interesting on LinkedIn. He's got some cool articles, and yeah, I think just seeing what other organizations are doing, not just from a people analytics perspective, but a data and analytics perspective as well, because often I find, particularly in my role, I work quite closely with our IT team, our digital team, and finance as well, and often because they tend to have bigger teams, I can draw on their insight as well. Yeah,
nice. And Jose, for you, where do you get your inspiration around people and supporting people and changing the way that we're thinking about this stuff? Where's somewhere you would direct someone, anything that you follow or any person you follow?
That's interesting. I wish I had thought about that prior to this, because I'm sure there are lots. But I get inspiration. There's some. I love it. I love just, this is not a particular person, but when I've got a bit of time, I love just a TED Talk deep dive, and I just watch. And it's sort of learnt my algorithms about what I'm interested in. But I get enormous amounts of inspiration from that. Like if I can block myself an hour and just watch a whole bunch of stuff, and I've been watching a lot recently on gender and society and stuff like that. And that's been really inspiring to me. And it impacts how you bring yourself to work as well. So yeah, that's just treasure trove, but it's an oldie but a goodie.
Oldie but a goodie.
Yeah.
One other option as well, if you like inspirational videos, the Disrupt HR is quite a cool, because they're 5-minute talks. So if you've only got 5 minutes for a meeting or something, that's quite a cool place to drop in, and people disrupting everything that we're in, which is awesome.
Oh, someone just quickly, Ellen mentioned David Green as well. David Green on LinkedIn is incredible. He publishes top 10 articles, popular articles in the people analytics space each month, and really useful resource. Yeah.
Wicked. Well, thank you so much for your time, ladies. It's been amazing. I wish we could continue this forever, and maybe we'll bring you back at some point. It has just been so real and so insightful, and I wish we could just clone you and just put you into all of our organisations throughout New Zealand. Before we close out, I want to just check in with the community in terms of how this event's been for you, but even more exciting is deciding our topic for next month. So we take the topic choices from what you vote. I'm just going to launch a quick little poll within Zoom. If you're on a device that allows you to add a few votes, we just ask about timing. Does this time of day work for you? Duration, is 1 hour a good length of time? And format, how is the live podcast format? We're just constantly checking in on these questions to make sure that that we're still meeting the needs of our community. And the last one is around which topic would you like to jam on next month? We've gone a bit of a wild angle, and we're going to go all remote. It's going to be a remote.
Yeah, good.
But we're gonna throw down 4 different options. So remote onboarding, remote recruitment, remote learning, and remote culture. Which are you most interested to talk about? Which do you have questions on? And once we've decided that, then we find an amazing speaker, or in this context, speakers, to come in and share their insights as well. So we'll hold another 10 seconds for our poll, and we'll close it and then share the results straight back to you guys, because what good is it collecting data if you don't share it back to the people that gave it to you, right? Data in HR. Let's end the poll. All right, and close it out. Let's go share results. And it looks as though our topic for next month is remote culture. Whew. Oof. All right. Charlotte, we've got a fun task now, working out who might like to share and be our speaker for remote culture next month. Thank you for joining us. A couple of links that we're just going to pop into the chat channel. One, if you want to keep up to date with these events, our LinkedIn group is a good place to start. Come and join, hang out, we'll share the events in there. We also share anything afterwards from these events, if there's any content or anything like that. Also, a quick link in here to a website which Charlotte and I have got a little initiative going, and we're looking to create a user group. If you enjoy experimenting, if you are in the Agile or the HR space or the Agile HR space, and you want to be part of our user group, we're looking for like 6 to 10 people to help us make some decisions about which things we're going to be prioritizing. So if you're interested, feel free to jump on there, chuck your name in, and it'll be awesome to have some of this wonderful community help guide some of the decisions that we're making about what we're building for you. So thank you for being part of today. I'm just buzzing. I can't wipe the smile off my face because I get to hang out and chat to some amazing wahine. Thank you so much. Thank you to our community for being here. And before you leave, please do. Did I share those results of the poll?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll just stop sharing that. Please do flick off your mic before you go, if it's okay with you, and say farewell and thank you to our beautiful wahine. So have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Farewell.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. That was great.
Thanks, guys.
Oh,
What an awesome way to end a Friday afternoon. Well, to kick off a Friday afternoon, right?
yeah.
Good times, good times.